welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at BTB World. In today's show, we will be talking about two very important topics. The first is in reference to what is happening within the political situation of Pakistan, of course, in the context of the Hakiki Azadi March that the PTI chairman has been talking about and is on its way again after the assassination attempt that has been made on him, in which, of course, the PTI chairman has been speculating a lot and outrightly blaming very important officials, including the Prime Minister, the Interior Minister and a senior military official in the intelligence agency. Unfortunately, of course, not backed by evidence, something that has been asked of him by various platforms on international media, and a question that has been put to him quite straightforwardly has been avoided, and he hasn't been able to give a very clear answer to back his claims and talk about where exactly is he getting this information from and what sort of evidence he has to prove that whatever he is saying is in fact true. So we're going to be taking a look at now what the current condition is in light of the kind of statements that the PTI chairman has been making, and then of course in the context of the long march that has continued its way again towards Rawalpindi and the federal capital. And of course we've been hearing the news coming in from the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif as well, who has spoken to media in London and talked about how the PTI chairman is only spreading agitation, and he's of course talked about what he thinks of the PTI chairman and his contribution to the public quite openly before as well. But now in the context of what is going on within the country, he has said that there is going to be nothing that is going to be avoided or talked about. There is only going to be legal action against the long march. Whatever needs to be dealt with will be dealt with legally. And then, of course, moving forward, he said we will not be succumbing to any such demands made by the PTI chairman, including the call for early elections, which will be happening on time as per the schedule. This is something that has been reiterated by the Prime Minister. Shehbaz Sharif was also accompanied by Mr. Nawaz Sharif, who also confirmed the fact that he is in possession of a diplomatic passport for Pakistan. And then when we talk about, of course, what his plans are as part of the political involvement, that's also a question mark that we'll try and explore and see moving forward what really are the plans by the PMLN and how they want to proceed with, of course, the elections, and then also their rule of power, and moving forward, what sort of action is going to be taken in light of what the PTI chairman Imran Khan is doing on ground and the kind of demands that he's been making. That is going to be the focus of our first segment today. The next one is going to look at another very important issue that Pakistan has been dealing with for quite some time now. Since June this year, we've been dealing with some devastating floods that have hit the country, a direct consequence of climate change, something that Pakistan has also experienced before and is most likely going to experience in the future as well. The climate change minister, Sherry Rahman, talked at a high-level event today as part of the COP27 summit, in which the Prime Minister also took part for 2 days. She was talking with reference to particular segment called Reflections from the Ground, Opportunities for Upscaling Preparedness to Future Climate Change Issues, and events of what is happening, of course, in the world. When we take a look at this particular issue, of course, this is something that Pakistan has been reiterating is part of climate change justice, and how the world needs to respond is through talking about loss and damage, which fortunately was part of the agenda, a small victory for Pakistan and such countries. But then again, what the minister has reiterated today is the fact that this needs to be translated into action, and pretty soon, because the kind of events that were predicted earlier are already happening, and we are currently in a very urgent situation. And so the kind of understanding that is required around climate change needs to also be present in terms of the way that financial institutions need to step up and act more speedily, and think about what exactly is going to happen with countries like Pakistan, who have incurred more than 30 million in losses. And this is, of course, just a brief assessment at first. And then moving forward, of course, the way that the people have suffered, the kind of consequences that are the food security issues and international crises, that is something that Pakistan alone cannot deal with, and no such developing country can, who contributes less than 1% in global carbon emissions. So whatever the world needs to decide with regards to climate change issues must be done very quickly, and these conversations need to be turned into action. That is the focus of the talk today as well, in terms of what we are going to be doing moving forward, and how do we turn the commitments that have earlier also been made with regards to climate change into an actuality for Pakistan and the people still suffering due to the devastating floods results. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analysts Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined for our first segment online by Mr. Javed Judoon, who's a political analyst, and also Mr. Zulfikar Ali Badr, spokesperson to Chairman BBP. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the show today. Let me start with you, Mr. Javed. Considering, of course, whatever is happening on ground, we've talked about the Hakiki Azadi March, we've talked about this particular objective that the PTI might have with regards to the appointment of the army chief, or of course the call for early elections, as they keep on talking about, and then of course coming back to power. That seems to be something that is put forward as a question to the PTI chairman on various accounts as well. But in terms of the kind of speculations that have been made, this is of course something that is quite questionable in terms of the fact that there is no evidence, and a lot of the interviews that the PTI chairman has been given in seems to be avoiding very important questions. Let's take a look at one such clip and we'll continue the discussion.
Nobody really has ever challenged the role of the military in Pakistan's politics the way you have. But what's difficult to understand is whether you want the military out of Pakistan's politics, or do you want the military on your side in Pakistan's politics? Which is it?
Honorable, listen to me. By the way, your voice has gone very low, so I hope they can raise the volume. Look, Honorable, let me say one thing. In the 200-year history of Test cricket, international cricket, I am the captain who brought in neutral umpires. I am the one who actually brought in neutral umpires in cricket because we wanted a fair result. Now, this, what you're talking about, you must understand that for me right now, the most important thing in Pakistan, one most important thing, is how do we get out of this quagmire? How do we get out of this situation right now?
Nobody really...
Well, that was the interview that the PTI chairman gave to TRT World. There have been others, including those given to DW and CNN. And many have asked tough questions, which unfortunately seem to have been avoided by the PTI chairman. Javed Sahab, considering, of course, these statements and the very serious allegations, of course, on the Prime Minister, the Interior Minister, and a senior intelligence officer, of course, warrant some sort of evidence to back them. But unfortunately, even if these have been directly asked by international media, the PTI chairman does not have a response. But at the end of the day, if we have these statements coming out, what sort of a perception is being created and how exactly should this be handled, considering, of course, that the long march is also continuing, these statements are being made, he has space on the media and, of course, access to people all around the world who get to hear his views. There are numerous followers within Pakistan as well. His popularity keeps on rising. What exactly is happening in terms of curbing the kind of damage that this is incurring?
Thank you very much, Sana. I think Imran Khan is definitely cashing in on the current political situation in Pakistan. The confrontation between Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Pakistan Democratic Movement government in Islamabad has gone too far. As far as the rhetoric is concerned, Imran is definitely getting the opportunity to speak with the people of Pakistan and really cherishing it, because he talks about the wrongdoings of the ruling elite in Pakistan. He believes that he stands at the high pedestal. On the one hand, he believes that he has got the popular support of the people of Pakistan, but on the contrary, he still believes that the path to the corridors of power goes with the support of the establishment. So he doesn't want to spoil his relations with the establishment on one hand, and on the other hand, he is definitely putting a lot of pressure on PDM government, and they seem to be under pressure right now because he has given the call to march towards Islamabad, and he, kind of a death with 1,000 cuts strategy has been adopted by Imran Khan, because he believes that the longer he stays out on the streets and the longer he gets the opportunity to speak every day to address his very charged up supporters on the streets right now in certain parts of Punjab. So I think as far as the political brinkmanship is concerned, he is definitely on the winning side. PDM seems to be on the defensive. They have literally doesn't have any narrative or counter narrative to counter Imran Khan's onslaught political speaking, and they seem to be a little in disarray as well. Pakistan People's Party is definitely enjoying the game on the margins of what is happening at the center stage. And all the kind of a criticism is going towards Pakistan Muslim League, and which finds itself in a very difficult and tight situation because of the price hike, inflation, and the very important appointments, two very important appointments going to be made in the coming days. And Prime Minister has gone to London to consult with his elder brother. And this has attracted a lot of criticism in the media as well. And I believe that it's a very critical juncture as far as Pakistan is concerned. It's a very defining moment, because this is about time that the two sides should pause for a while and think about the country rather than their petty interests. Because what is happening with the people of Pakistan, the 200 million people are looking towards the leadership of the opposition as well as the government, the alliance which is ruling in
Right, and
Islamabad.
absolutely, Javed Saab, of course, that is what we all hope for at the end of the day, but it doesn't seem that we're anywhere close to that actually happening. Zulfikar Saab, you have been accused by Javed Saab of enjoying on the sidelines. I hope you're not having too much fun, but you can respond to that. But I'd also like to add into whatever is happening in terms of course, the kind of actions and statements coming out from the PTI leadership, including, of course, the PTI chairman, seems to be happening without any sort of consequence. Is that actually true? Because when we take a look at the Long March or the previous statements and then allegations coming in after the assassination attempt, it seems that perhaps something should have had some sort of consequence. It has been condemned at various levels. It has been talked about, but there hasn't been any way of actually creating any sort of a hindrance in the path that the PTI chairman seems to be following.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Hafiz Saab, Faisal Saab, and Javed Saab. And thank you for inviting me to your show. You see, currently, the claims which Mr. Khan has been claiming in his speeches while talking to the people on ground, for sure he has a popular vote, but the popularity does not make him an honest person, and competency does not make him a capable person, does not give him that honesty. Actually, the thing is, Khan Saab is standing at a point where he is not even thinking for Pakistan. And he has big stakes, high stakes. As for me, if I look at him, he has got nothing to lose. He has no stake in Pakistan other than he is enjoying the popularity. That is the reason he is asking for elections, and he knows that elections are going to happen on time. And right now, the purpose, the aim for his Hakiki Azadi March is to pressurize the government to bring forward the people to Islamabad in order to gain the support from the establishment, in order to gain support that the new army, the appointment of the new army chief, he should be considered, his names, his recommendation should be considered, which is not going to happen. So Imran Khan is building and pressurizing, building that pressure, and government is not at all worried. Government will handle it because it's a federal government. And if I take you a little back, he stayed in Islamabad for 126 days for a sit-in, and he had that support of the military and many hidden forces, but the government never, went anywhere. The government stayed and completed its tenure. But right now, the situation is Khan Saab will have to come to the Islamabad, but he wants something to happen, that there will be a fight between his people and the security institution. So military should intervene, and as a result, he wants martial law to be applied in Pakistan. He doesn't care for a democratic government.
Right, and
So-
there's no clarity on the questions that have been asked regarding this as well. We'll take a short break and continue the discussion. Welcome back to the debate. We're talking, of course, about the PTI chairman Imran Khan and his call for the long march that has, of course, continued again, and what exactly is going to happen within the political dynamic. And I can almost feel Faisal's eagerness because I've been wanting to ask a question prior to the break as well. So without further ado.
Thank you, Sana. I wanted to go towards obviously Javed Saab. Javed Saab, earlier you were talking about that PTI, especially Imran Khan, he has gained popularity within the population, and of course this long march is turning out to be a favor towards them. But don't you think, sir, that the ordinary life on the roads is being disrupted? If we talk about economy, of course Pakistan is losing economically as well. So all of these things would matter, and eventually people would think rationally, and they will come up with this narrative that whatever PTI and Imran Khan has done in the recent past, it has actually disrupted the life in Pakistan, number one, and number two, of course, it has dented Pakistan's economy as well, sir.
I think let us not forget that whenever any party group or alliance was in opposition, they always went for the protest marches and long marches as well. Imran is not the exception. When the combined opposition, the PDM, the current ruling alliance in power in Islamabad, when they were in opposition and Imran Khan was in power, they were doing the same thing, disrupting life, going for the protests on the streets, and then even the long marches toward Islamabad as well. I think nobody cares for the people of Pakistan. I agree with you, because they are the main stakeholders of the country, of the state of Pakistan. But least they get, what they get is probably the difficulties they face every day in their lives. But I think the paradox for the government right now is like a situation between the devil and the deep blue sea, because if they go for the early elections, they would be routed, I believe. And if they go for the elections later in October, they would still be routed. So I think they definitely are lost in space. They don't understand what to do right now. If they go for the elections, I think the tide is in favor of Imran Khan. He is getting the kind of a support every populist leader gets. And the kind of a cult following he has right now, I think he's a very difficult person to be contained right now. I think the only option for the government is go for the negotiations, engage him politically, and go for a date which is acceptable to both the camps. Like elections can't be held in October. The situation really can't
I want
go
to
on
ask
like
something
this.
here, because you of course have pointed out how the PTI chairman is of course a bit of a problem these days, and something that has been echoed by the Prime Minister even a while back in an interview. But when we, Farooq, talk about these issues, they seem to be perhaps existing out of the space of just one person at the moment, considering what has been said and how many followers that exist, and the kind of sentiments that are prevailing within the public with regards to the sanctity of the institutions, and of course the kind of conspiracies that seem to be popping up everywhere. When we take a look at all of this, it seems to be a problem that perhaps might even surpass just what the PTI is demanding right now, or even if they get back in power. How will we be able to, in general, as what we expect from a political leadership, from a parliament, be able to handle all of this and regain whatever damage has been done?
Right, Sana, let me first talk about disruptions that are going on, right? My daughters study in Islamabad, and for a week they haven't been able to go to school. Why? Because many teachers come from Rawalpindi, and Khan Saab supporters have been disrupting, exits from the city. the first question and the first issue that one has to actually look at. Now, these things have been going on for over 15 years now, lawyers march and then onwards. Why is it that we haven't come up with any kind of town planning to ensure that our cities are not ambushed by anybody? That whosoever wants to protest, they should not be able to ambush or lay siege to the city. This is a simple question. But regarding Imran Khan Saab and his policies and his politics, I've been actually listening to all these interviews. One thing that stands out is that now he says that he doesn't mind whosoever becomes army chief, right? His protest is not regarding army chief's appointment. But amazingly, then he chooses two very strange things that indicate that it has something to do with it. One, the month of November. In November, you're going to have transition or change in Rawalpindi, which is the general headquarters, and a new army chief is going to take over. He has timed his entire parade or march based on that. Why is it? Right. Secondly, the city of culminating point. Why is it that he has chosen Rawalpindi to rejoin the campaign, and he has invited everybody to come to Rawalpindi, not Islamabad? This is a big question, because it seems that there seems to be some kind of muscular angling to get whatever you want. The second thing that is very serious from his communication is regarding his main demand, early elections. Now, I tell you, one of the reasons why Pakistan can take pride in calling itself a democracy is one decision that was taken during General Musharraf's time, and that was by all stakeholders of the state, that parliaments of Pakistan will complete their 5-year terms. We have seen that none of the prime ministers have completed a 5-year term in the history of the country, but luckily, thanks to that decision, previous 3 assemblies have completed, and this one is headed to do the same thing. Why do you want to disrupt something that important? I think that nobody is going to concede even that. If that doesn't happen, what exactly will be the purpose? Just to create chaos, just to create more problems? I consider, continuously there's a reason why I don't criticize PTI supporters as cult or anything. I think that we have actually, dropped the ball when it comes to our millennials and Gen Z. We haven't been able to give them the kind of environment that was needed. And at this moment, those people are inhaling all this propaganda, all this conspiracy theory, and this will be a recipe for disaster, because countries have to actually work on economy to produce more, to get more, right? And if conspiracy theory is the only thing that you are going to churn out, that is not going to help anybody. So right now, my concern at this moment is whenever Imran Khan Sahab speaks to the international media, and unfortunately this is, I don't understand why is he doing it right now, because it seems that the questions which are very legitimate, all these interviews were great, but he hasn't been able to give a satisfying answer.
Absolutely.
Finally, one liner regarding a decision that was taken, and it is frightening, that Imran Khan Sahab has decided that when he rejoins his campaign or his long march, he is not going to use the bulletproof shield. If that is so, whosoever is advising him is his enemy, because this will actually ensure that he becomes a high value target, and then it becomes a recipe for disaster for the entire country. So for heaven's sake, convince him to use the shield.
Yes,
absolutely, and we also hope that our political leaders have the wisdom to make sensible choices themselves as well. Zulfikar Sahab, considering this, of course, and the kind of temperature that has been created for quite some time, there is a lot that the public wants to see in terms of what is going to happen. But when we talk about the political situation, it seems that whenever we hear the kind of stances made by political leadership, it always boils down to something else at the end of the day, and there is a dialogue and a negotiation which brings in in a completely different set of events. And that may be so in terms of the kind of peace and progress that is needed for the country. But at this moment, what can possibly be something that can be a sort of settlement or a compromise that can be reached, as Javed Sahab earlier was also pointing out, because it seems that there are big demands that are being made, big accusations that have been laid down. After this, what sort of negotiating table exists, and what sort of possibilities are there for this to move forward in a peaceful way?
And Zulfikar Sahab, especially talking about the acceptable date for the elections, is it right after April, sir, that can be accepted to all of the parties?
And if so, why?
And if so, why? Yes.
I should have asked you, by the way. Okay, so go ahead.
It's a,
Yeah.
Are we talking about the early or very early dates, sir? Just on a lighter note. You see, the thing is, in my personal opinion, the only solution that can be uh, provided in this current situation is that all the political stakeholders, all the political parties, leadership, all the political forces, including PTI and establishment, they have to come down on the table to have a dialogue with each other. And they have to make a policy, short term, mid term, long term, and they decide that whether you stay in government or you leave the government. The policy has to be followed by all incoming governments. This has to be decided at this time. And when once you come on the table, you decide that there are negotiations and there is a flexibility. So Mr. Khan, when he was in power, he was not in talking terms and he never wanted to sit on the table with the opposition at that time. So once he was gone home and the new government came, the national unity government, they have given a sign that Mr. Khan should come on the table and let's have a dialogue. Because this is a time he's not in the opposition. He has government in 4 parts of this country: KP, Punjab, Gilgit, Baltistan, and AJK. So once Mr. Khan comes on the table and shows some kind of a flexibility, have a dialogue, or send somebody on his behalf, that things can be settled and some solution can be found out. Otherwise, you see, he is not ready to sit. He is a stubborn child. He is acting like a stubborn child who doesn't want to listen to his parents, his siblings, his elders, nobody in the country. And he is pushing that whatever I am saying, that is the right thing. I don't care for rest of the people in Pakistan or the institutions. So this is kind of a very dangerous situation. And the date of the election, that can be negotiated. I don't rule out. I don't rule out. I personally feel that the elections are going to be on time. And I don't rule out, once all the political forces, stakeholders, and all the, uh, including PTA, if PTI comes on the table and start negotiation, I think there can be a dialogue, something that you can bargain uh, about
All right, of
giving
course.
and taking.
Right, that
A
remains to be
solution
seen.
can be sorted.
Yes, absolutely. And we hope so, of course, because that is what the nation wants in terms of the kind of peace that is required for the progress of the country. Javed Sahab, very quickly, there was also a confirmation coming in from Nawaz Sharif Sahab that he has received a diplomatic passport from the government. Will he be returning anytime soon? In your opinion, what sort of role will he playing in the current political dynamic, is already playing perhaps in this political dynamic, in the way that we want to, of course, see things happening and evolve? Can he contribute to something in the current situation?
Sana, I really don't know whether he's going to come back to Pakistan or not, but I strongly believe that he should come back to Pakistan, because Pakistan is where the action is. Pakistan is where the decision should be made, and all political stakeholders must come to Pakistan. And Nawaz Sharif is definitely a leader of one of the biggest parties in Pakistan. He does have a kind of a weight. He can definitely get involved in political activity after he is cleared from the courts, of course.
Right.
And ultimately, I think he would definitely make the difference as far as the negotiations are concerned. What Zulfikar Saab was just pointing out, and that was very encouraging. He said that there's always a possibility that political forces can sit together, they
Absolutely.
can
There is
talk
always a
about
possibility, and we
something.
hope that possibility is something that can actually turn into a reality. Thank you very much, Javed Jadoon Saab, for joining us, and of course, Zulfikar Ali Badr for joining us. As always, this is, of course, the first segment of the show, and we'll move on to the next one after a short break. Welcome back to the debate. We're now going to be talking about what is happening in terms of the climate change justice that Pakistan has been asking for, especially since after the devastating floods that hit the country earlier this year. The COP27 continues. The Prime Minister has participated in 2 days of the summit, and now, of course, senior leadership of Pakistan is still participating, including the Climate Change Minister, Ms. Sherry Rahman, who has talked about very important issues and aspects of this conversation that Pakistan needs for things to get going, and of course other such countries who continue to suffer as a result of climate change. We've been joined for more on this by Dr. Parvez Ahmed, who's a climate change and water expert. He's also Director BWP and former member Prime Minister's Task Force on Climate Change. Thank you very much, Parvez Ahmed, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. I'll start with you in terms of course, firstly, the kind of benefit that we hope to achieve out of the COP27. Of course, everyone is hoping that the conversations that have been around for quite some time can now turn into action, something that has been reiterated by the Climate Change Minister as well, and especially quite urgently also, because of course currently we're dealing with a crisis in Pakistan, and there are of course many others around the world. How soon can these conversations be turned into a reality, and also in terms of especially the kind of difficult conversations and discussions, especially surrounding financial infrastructure, which was fortunately part of the discussion, can actually be developed into something of a mechanism that helps the countries, and then the countries around the world can contribute through it.
I think this all remains to be seen. I've been part of these negotiations for the last 15 years, starting from COP 2015. A lot of promises get made, a lot of things get into the agenda, but when it really comes to putting the money on the table, that's where a lot of countries shy out, And I was making a presentation yesterday for the G20 out of Bali, and made the similar plea which Sherry Rahman and some of the others are making, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, made. The response generally is one of thinking and one of proposals, and what are we talking about in terms of actual money. Pakistan has put up the case that its total losses is around 33 billion US dollars, and that it seeks climate justice and it wants a fair share, as Secretary General Gutierrez has also been pointing this out, and he's been very supportive of that. There is also an ongoing crisis out in Africa on drought, which is of the similar level of severity, but Pakistan's urgency is much more. I mean, we're hurting right now, and we'd like to see some money being put on the table. Institutions such as IMF, the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, others are doing their part. I mean, they're coming up with soft loans, grants in terms of some amount of money. But it's really those countries which, like the G20 and some of these others, which have to really step up the effort, and Pakistan needs the money right now. And my feeling yesterday was that it's not that it's just going to come and that some people are going to put up cash, and it's not like Saudi Arabia and some of the other friends which are saying that, okay, we're out to help you, or China in that matter. They want a very thought out proposal. They want to know exactly where that money is needed, and they want the absolute transparency about the funds. They want to be ensured that these funds have a lot of audit behind them, and these are the funds which are going to be spent where they're being intended for, and that it's not funds which Pakistan puts into its balance of payment and wants to look good, So while we may have an urgency, that same urgency is not being felt by the G20 and some of the other countries which are the major donors. I think it's important to Pakistan to further step on this case, put up that case of climate justice, and seek reprisal as quickly as possible. We need the funds right now, and we need to make a very cogent proposal that where are these funds going to be used. Just asking for money itself doesn't make much of a difference. I've been in part of these in negotiations earlier, and that agenda item comes in there and then people sleep over it. Even the $100 billion which has been promised for the Green Finance Fund, Pakistan has not been able to assess that Green Climate Fund. I mean, it requires a very solid intellectual base. It requires a solid making proposals outright which are competitive, which have international backing. Just merely making political statements and expecting people for the world stage to hear on that, I think that can be fine. Another 10 days will tell us whether we were successful in our political maneuvering or our political agitation of this issue at the international level. And it's not only Pakistan, sir, that is hurting, it's the world over. That's the case which we're trying to really push forward. It's basically an issue of climate justice.
Dr. Saab, that is a very good point you made, that we don't need only our goal, we need a map to get there as well. But let me ask you about another thing which is very serious. Recently, you just brought up the total estimate given by World Bank and ADB. And one of our guests actually in this program was raising this point that it is perhaps not prudent to trust solely on the estimates of lenders, because they might have their own interest in lending more money to you in the hour of crisis, and there should be some domestic audit of needs and requirements as well. What do you say to that, sir?
I fully support that, and I think whatever you want to put money into, it has to be long-term sustainable. I wouldn't want to make money for transfer payments. I mean, I was in a conference just the other day in Quetta, and we want to be very ensured. A lot of the NGOs were there, people were there. We want to be very ensured that that money is very transparent. We want it put into places where it's going to have a long-term sustainable impact. These floods, sir, are going to be there in another 4 or 5 years. You're going to get floods at the same intensity. The same level of damage will take place even then after 4 or 5 years. 2010 you got the floods, 2015 you got the floods, now we've got them in 2022. Our earliest estimates with me and Aslam were that it would only be about 6.8 to maybe $14 billion, on the average about $10 billion. But this one we're saying we're talking $33 billion. $33 billion is what the donors are saying. Our own estimates are really not very clear. One day we start with 10, then we say 16, then we say 25, then we say 43. The world is also confused. We need to really sit down back with a paper and pencil and see realistically what our damages are. Yes, I fully agree with you that the bank or the ADB, I mean, they might have some agenda that, okay, we feel that this is the level of the estimates. Pakistan, if it's going to be a loan, we want to be very sure that how much money we're taking in as a loan. If they're going to repay our debts or they're going to do some debt swaps, we want to know that. I think that is the direction which is more prudent for Pakistan given our economic situation. We want to be very careful in taking loan money for this type of thing. If there are aids and grants of climate justice, fine. But if it's just an outright loan which our population has to pay up, we may not want to be part of that deal. We want to be very careful.
Exactly. Dr. Pervez, if we look at, obviously in the post floods, obviously I myself visited Balochistan and I myself visited Sindh at that time, and I experienced how people were coping with it. And if we talk about the local governments and if we talk about the institutions, they have been robust when it comes to providing people with the adequate help, and a large number of population, it lost its reliability. Obviously the families they were relying on the livestock they had, they lost that, and of course for a longer time they need to be rehabilitated in terms of giving them a new fresh livestock so that they can continue their life, and it is a sustainable rehabilitation that we can provide them. And if we talk about obviously COP27, don't you think that they should be considerate enough on this fact that people and the institutions, they felt a large burden on them and a large burden on the economy of Pakistan overall with these floods, and that is why we require the climate justice, because this happened just because of the global climate change. And if this is what Pakistan is seeing, that we are not being helped out, and if we are not being helped out, then what's left for us, trying to negotiate with them? Because if they are not considerate enough towards us, how we have managed to cope with it, then I think it's no point to go along with them.
And Dr. Saab, because of the dearth of time, let me piggyback on this. Earlier you made a very insightful comment regarding cash transfers. You said that perhaps that is not a prudent course of action. So which one is it? Because they are poor who are stranded in the middle of nowhere. How exactly to help them?
I think my own bias, and it's really a bias, is payment for work. I don't want to be dealing with a population which is dependent only on transfer cash payments. There's a lot of corruption which goes on in that. I've seen that even happening in some of these so-called people such program, this program. We want to be very careful. We are putting a nation on a begging bowl. We want to rehabilitate people. We want, like, this is a good idea. You want to give some livestock, give some baby livestock, give the women an opportunity, give the people a way to get back into lives, help them rebuild. A small amount of loan which should be repayable. If they go and they rebuild their homes just in that same spot, it's going to get washed away again. I mean, as I say again and again on your program, that these floods will be there in another 4 or 5 years. You want to be very cautious where you're putting in the investment. I mean, it's painful. I fully agree. Even right now, I mean, somebody in my group, we had flown over from Sindh, and he said the situation is terrible still. Well, we say that we have rehabilitated, we have been able to rescue people. No, there are a lot of areas of Sindh which are still covered by very heavy flood water. They are not going to plant any wheat. The crisis which is coming is going to be a food security crisis, a very severe food security and a health crisis. I think as we make payments, as we make some delivery to people, provide it through a work mechanism. People should feel that they are not beggars, that okay, and people are willing to work. I know women are willing to work in agriculture. People are willing to work. I mean, just putting people out in the dark, and just saying that, oh, this is a small amount of goodie. How many times can you give the biscuits? How many times can you give water? How many times you cannot do that?
Right.
And that's what the world wants to see. I tell you, from yesterday's point, the world wants to see very clearly Pakistan's commitment in air rehabilitation, how they want to do it. Do they really have a plan? And that's what we're missing.
Dr. Pervez Saab, and that is important. Absolutely, and I understand your point in terms of what Pakistan needs to do in order to ensure that this actually happens. But considering, of course, the kind of urgency and the situation, especially that you're pointing at, of course, that exists right now, there's a lot that needs to be done very, very quickly. And when we talk about quick action, of course, in general, climate change response has been very, very slow around the world. How exactly will Pakistan be able to ensure this? Is this perhaps the only hindrance in terms of the kind of plan that we need to put forward to? Or is there anything else also that is slowing down this process that can be paced up by Pakistan's efforts?
I think it's a good start. I mean, you have your United Secretary, Mr. Gutierrez, on your side. You have people on your side, and there's a lot of sympathy. In that yesterday's G20 meeting, I felt that there was a lot of sympathy for Pakistan. They simply want to be assured that where Pakistan needs the money, are you coming down with the proposal? If you're just asking for money, oh, there's climate justice, give us more money. People are not willing to do that. These countries will shy away like anything, I can tell you. What they want to know is how quickly do you put up a proposal, and people are willing to listen. A cogent proposal, the Japanese are willing to listen. They said, fine, we know that you have a disaster. You tell us where can we realistically help? Which area are you talking about? They want to know the specifics. I mean, writing off a check and giving it to the government, people are not going to do that. I'm afraid that this whole effort may be a futile exercise if you're just expecting that you're going to come from there and somebody's just going to hand you over a check. They're not going to do that. It is only based on science-based proposals, very clear ideas where that money is going to go. What is the transparency mechanism? What is the audit mechanism which goes behind it? Just by merely saying that, or one of our prime ministers or somebody saying that, oh, we will ensure the fund. That the international community doesn't work like that. People are now very cautious. Money is not, it's not available that way. The Africans are coming up. They are begging. Kenya is begging really that, look, we have a drought. We have people, 40 million people who are going to really go under. If Pakistan needs to be helped, there are other 20 which are also asking for that help. Yes, our urgency is there. We need the money right now. We have a strong...
Dr. Saab, that you are saying, let me very quickly ask you also that regarding proposal, do you recommend that the government come up with or institute a separate task force, or do you think that our current bureaucratic complexion can actually ensure that there is a proposal in place that can convince the world at this moment?
I don't think we have a proposal. We need to really very quickly formulate that type of proposal. Maybe not one, but maybe 10 from 10 different sources. And then we need, these proposals have to be world class. You don't do a proposal just that, oh, we put something on, a PC1. Nobody buys those PC1s in the international market. They want a science-based proposal. They want to know exactly the time frame you're talking about. They also want to know what you are trying to do for a long-term sustainability of this problem. Part of it's climate change, part of it's water governance and water management. I put 70%, 60% on water governance and management. A lot of it's our own fault. 40-50% on climate change, while the rains have been overwhelming.
Right, absolutely, Parvez Saab. We'd love to hear more from you in terms of what can be done. These are very valid points that you've been making, but unfortunately we're out of time. Of course, Pakistan needs to step up in terms of what it needs to do in terms of the kind of climate change action that is required. But as you are saying, this is of course a prerequisite to the kind of demands that Pakistan has also been making, and we hope that we can actually move forward with that. Thank you very much, Farooq and Faisal, also for being part of the discussion. And moving forward, we hope that the kind of responsibilities that exists upon the shoulders of the political leadership, including in terms of climate change and political action, that they can actually talk about the things that matter, and then moving forward act upon the things that are needed by the people of Pakistan. That's all that we have from the debate. Have a nice weekend. See you Monday.